Hey everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Nigel. I'm here at the Talent and Web3 interview series where we interview various founders, operators, and talents across Asia in the Web3 space. And the whole aim is trying to understand what is Web3, who are the founders and movers and shakers here, and just to understand if there's any opportunities everybody else wants to jump into. Having said that, the guest today is Giang. There's a lot of things that we want to chat about. He's our very first guest. I'm very excited to deep dive into the problem, the solution, the exciting things that they're doing down there in Vietnam / Reneverse, which he will talk about more. Giang, nice to see you. Hello, hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Cool. Having said that, let's jump right into it. Giang, what is your Web3 origin story? Tell everybody here a little bit about yourself.
I think my first kind of touch into Web3 started in 2017 when I just basically kind of dabble into the space a little bit, kind of reading, the basic articles. What is Bitcoin? What is Ethereum? What is proof of stake, proof of work, all kind of that good stuff. It only stopped as a kind of curiosity. I kind of looked into trading a few Ethereum or Bitcoin here and there. But apart from those two kind of major tokens, I never kind of touch any smaller or alternative tokens besides that. And then fast forward to the end of 2019 and into 2020. Where we have seen like a crazy kind of bull run on the crypto space, and that's when it kind of brought me into looking into the space more seriously and kind of look at it more, focusing more on the technological aspect of it instead of on the trading and transaction kind of features around tokens and NFTs. With that kind of with the background of technology, where I worked as a consultant before, it's kind of natural for me to start from the technology perspective, and that's where I start to look at the tech, how it can be applied, and with NFTs being very like a huge boom back then, especially in gaming, and I'm also like a longtime gamer as well, like even dated back to the 90s game. Mario, King Kong, and stuff like that. Fast forward to today, I play through a lot of like online gaming, especially like, MMORPGs that involve like an economic aspect around your gameplay as well, not just playing the game, where it involved like, kind of investing in certain items, trading it among users, sometimes even for real money. I kind of quickly see like, the benefit of blockchain for what it actually is which is like kind of build a trustless system, so that gamers can trade, their asset much easier. A little bit like focus more on that a little bit is that, traditionally as a gamer, I have to go through like pretty sketchy kind of forums online to kind of look for sellers or a buyer of the gaming item that I need. And most of the time, the transaction involve a lot of risk, the risk of scam, because there's no third party. And even if there is, you don't exactly know how to trust them. So yeah, that's always been the pain, for me, particularly in the gaming space. And with blockchain, it brings like a definite values there as I can freely trade, among users as well. That kind of opened up like the opportunity for me to see in Web3 and kind of see exactly the gap from a technology standpoint so that I can create a product that serve both the Web2 and the Web3 studios so that they can better use these technologies and distribute it to the gamers better. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's be practical, right? Like what about Web3 and blockchain? Do you think really solves this problem? What made you really interested? And as you mentioned in the call right now, also off camera a while ago, you're somebody super practical. You were a consultant. You went into private equity. You worked in the U.S. I assume you didn't get into blockchain just because of the hype and the weird, crazy returns. So let's be critical about it, right? Like, what is the thing about the blockchain tech / industry that you saw? Oh, there's actually something here that can solve the problem that you already know.
Yeah, so this is actually a core premise on why I choose to develop what I develop, right, with Reneverse, is that if you play any online game before, it's very common that eventually the game will be shut down by the publishers. When it runs to the end of the cycle, they no longer want to support it or anything, expanding the content anymore. They just shut it down. And that happens to me like multiple times, like, with Maple Stories, with Gunbound, like, OG got a game before. And it's really a pain point that nobody can solve in the Web2 space, because Web2 technology, it brings us like the connectivity so that we can play online games together, but it still put the custody of everything you own in the game into the publisher's hands. So everything, every items that you own is simply living in the database somewhere that, they are using, the game is using for their operations. And when they shut it down, it's basically like everything you own and earn through the game, it will be lost. With Web3, it's not the case anymore, because if you employ Web3 technology as a decentralized kind of database, your ownership of the items is still living on the blockchain indefinitely, unless the blockchain is, shut down. And, with Ethereum, that is very, very unlikely in the near future. So that kind of lead into the answer of what is the true value of blockchain, especially in gaming, right? Which is ownership. So you can actually own your items, and, the ownership is not verified or, responsible by the publishers anymore. The ownership is actually living somewhere else in your blockchain kind of database. And that is gonna create like, a shift of mindset that, you don't play just for the sake of playing games or enjoying it anymore. You can actually play a game, and on top of enjoying it, you can own things, like really own things. So yeah, that has been like a core premise of, okay, how do we bring this kind of technology into the hands of millions of gamers out there, not just the blockchain kind of Web3 gamers that is, I'm going to be frank, like playing the game just for the sake of making money. Like in the case of Axie Infinity and all the game that eventually failed in the bear market.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And who should care about this? Like, let's imagine, for example, the mom and pop who doesn't know about blockchain, maybe they played a game or two on their mobile phone. Who's the most important people that can benefit from this? Is it the teenage gamer playing in the network cafes, or is it even the people playing Wii in their living room, etc.?
Yeah, so in terms of seeing the value of blockchain, there's kind of like, and this is my philosophy as well, is that you don't really need to tell people that, oh, you're using blockchain tech.
Yeah.
For me, like, I'm focusing more on creating real life use cases with the application of the blockchain technology underneath. And the end user doesn't really need to know exactly what kind of technology your game is kind of using. They just know that, okay, if I play this game and I earn this item, I actually own it. And, from the definition of ownership, what can I do with it? And from these kind of utilities of your items / NFTs, it will bring into kind of a new utility that kind of foray into your everyday life. Like, for example, when if you are, just a guy who just hooked up to the internet in the year 2000s, you're just going to go to google.com and it just work, right? Like, you don't go to google.com and then you'd be like, oh, what kind of like database they're running, what kind of like servers that they are using. You just use it and it works. And, I approach Web3 from the same kind of perspective as well. And instead of kind of focusing on telling people, hey, this is blockchain, this is really cool, I would just like, hey, do you know you can do this with your gaming items? And that is much, much easier for even like, people who hate it, like blockchain gaming or NFT gaming right now, to actually kind of stop for a moment and look at blockchain as a technology.
Got it. So having said that, the company you're building, you mentioned Reneverse. What exactly is it? Where in the Web3 space or in the technology space does Reneverse fall into? Is it like an AWS for blockchain? Is it, I don't know, like a Twilio or those kinds of SaaS products for blockchain? Well, can you explain where exactly this falls?
Yeah. So we are not really equivalent to AWS in a way that AWS is, speaking in technological terms, they are the infrastructure of your applications, of your game, for example. We are not infrastructure in that kind of sense, because the real infrastructure in blockchain is actually the chain itself. So Ethereum, Solana, Polygon, all of these are the actual database that you are using. Basically where you store all the data. So in terms of like, if we need like a kind of comparison to easily imagine what we are basically a SaaS product that building on top of the blockchain infrastructure that are the chains right now. So if we look at it from the studio perspective, right? The studio facing a lot of questions right now, especially if they are Web2 studios. They're going to be like, okay, Web3 is kind of cool, or Web3 is something I need to know about. How do I approach it? How do I use it? And what do I need to work out a strategy for it? So all of these kind of questions right now is basically where we're focusing on. And that is our target as well, which is legacy, or not legacy, but the Web2 studios that we know today that create all of these like Web2 games that we have played. And eventually they, in the future, I don't know exactly when is it, but they will, they will have to employ the technology, the Web3 technology one way or the other. And we are born to exactly fill that gap. And, as a first step right now, we are focusing on how to bring them in from Web 2 into Web 3, step by step. Like, not like a full blown kind of Web 3 studio from day one, but mostly kind of peeling the onions with them and kind of see, okay, this is something that we can do first. This is something that we can backlog for later. And that's where the conversations that we have been talking about with the studio that we're working with.
So when you say studio, it's the gaming studios, right? Just to
Yes.
clarify. And for people who aren't super interested / not very familiar with the gaming world, what are those layers of the onion, so to speak? If you can share that, like what are the things that you're hearing from these studios that, oh, this is the first one we want to understand. Here's the roadmap towards from Web 2 to Web 3. Can you give them a better sense / specifics on what exactly this journey is?
Yes. This is something I would love to share, definitely, because most of the time that I work with them, we kind of work to answer these kind of questions. So usually the first question is, how do I develop a blockchain games, right? And the gaming part, of course, they know exactly what to do. But in terms of operating, let's say an online game or a real-time kind of like PvP, kind of peer-to-peer gameplay, how do that technology work with your traditional technology, Web 2 technology, right? Because, for example, if we talk about online game, the latency is one of the key features, right? Like you and I can play the same game, but you can't really wait 2 or 3 minutes to go into the next step of the game, right? Nobody can do that. So the question is, how do we develop an online game that, give out the same kind of experience to the gamers, but then still use the Web3 technology? Because, if you interact with Web3, and this is a pretty common knowledge as well, is that there's always a lag, behind the moment you initiate a transaction on the blockchain until it's get completed. Mm-hmm. How do we basically that is where the conversation started. And then we kind of peel the onions into, okay, let's talk about kind of the gaming first. Do you have any kind of game that you have in your backlog, basically the code that they have already developed, that you can pilot this kind of new technology? And then most likely the answer is yes, because if they are a Web2 studio, most of them have a lot of I would say IP, which is the content that they develop. Most of them have a lot of IPs that they have in the backlog, from the old game that they published before, or just a passion project that they do on the side, for example. That's always the beginning. And if they don't have kind of any strategy at all, then I would say anything is going to be very vague until you actually start working on it. So I always prompt for the studio to kind of choose a guinea pig project where they can kind of test it out on the side with, of course, low investment into it, so that they can still focusing on, their cash generating business on Web2.
Oh, interesting. So it sounds like an advisory business, less so a SaaS business, or maybe I'm not understanding correctly.
Yeah. So right, that's just an outer layer of the onions, and then later on, when we kind of dive into the technical detail, I'm not going to bore everyone here with every single step in IT, but I can give you a very brief answer about that. Is that every time you kind of employ new technologies, whether, kind of moving from one brand to another, let's say moving from AWS into Azure or Google Cloud, you always have to do a step that is called migration. Mm-hmm. Migration is very common knowledge in IT. You do that every day. And that's where we kind of start on actually working out the executable kind of strategy with the studios. Is that, first thing first, you need to work out a mechanism so that we can kind of migrate your technology right now that you're using for your game into a technology that combine that blockchain features and still running and, providing the same experience, at least the same experience on the front end first. So, and then they're going to ask, of course, okay, how do we do that? And that's where the tool, the product that we develop come in, that we're going to say, hey, let's look at our product, because you don't need to hire a bunch of let's say outsourcing or very high budget kind of experts in Web3 just to, kind of get started. You can use your traditional team, which is proficient with Web2 kind of technology, familiar with JavaScript, familiar with C#, C++, and all that kind of traditional language. And our tools can basically help these kind of developers to use blockchain feature and interfacing with blockchain without really learning any smart contract development. So that's where the tools came in, and in this phase we are focusing on that kind of adoption first, and then of course in the backlog we are developing features so that let's say when we completed the migration, let's say you complete the integration to have all the items that people want to earn inside the game on blockchain. Then what features do you provide to the users who owns that kind of asset? That's how the onions keep peeling, and we go into this stage from another stage. And it sounds very familiar to consulting business, because that's where I came from. And that's where I think the best way to work with B2B clients is that, you kind of peeling the onions and working to kind of help them one pinpoint at a time until they're confident and execute that kind of strategy.
Got it. So if I take a step back and try and understand and regurgitate what I just heard, the software that you're providing is a B2B software where it helps people kind of have a starter kit to move or migrate a project from Web2 to Web3, such that they don't have to deal with all the technicalities of Web3, at least from the get-go to start. Okay, makes a lot of sense.
Of course, they still need to understand the features that Web3 offers, but they don't need to actually learn and acquire talents that is very scarce right now in terms of Web3 developers.
Yeah, you don't need to hire a blockchain engineer or like a team of blockchain developers, principals, blockchain engineer, whatever. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Why this problem in particular? Why do you think the opportunity is here rather than, I don't know, trading $1 million JPEGs or helping people trade NFTs like a lot of people?
Yeah, so I would say like I came from a perspective of conservative gamers that I care most about the gaming aspect of gaming. And all the features about trading, owning is basically like an add-on features of my experience in the gaming world. And that's how I kind of thought about the whole process and kind of choose that, if we look at the market today, most of the gaming studio in the whole world today reside in the Web2 space. Because gaming has been developed in the past like 20 years, more than 20 years. If you talk strictly about online game, then it's around 20 years. A lot of them are actually making a lot of good games and have true capability in gaming word design and kind of gameplay design to ensure that the gamers can enjoy playing the game first. But because of the wrong applications, like we have seen in the blockchain space and in the crypto space in general, where we have a lot of rug pulling, where we have a lot of trust issues, it kind of became like it's like a taboo in the current climate right now among the gaming industry, especially in the gamers communities right now. But the true value is still there. All of these Web2 studio will eventually adopt this technology and kind of, provide more features on top of their games. And if we don't help them, then we are losing out on the opportunity to bring this technology to mass adoption. That's what I see. Because if you look at the Web3 studios, that Web3 gaming studios that has been, let's say founded in the past 2 years, the number is still only a fraction compared to the Web2 studio kind of space.
Makes sense. So that kind of assumes that Web3 is inevitable going into gaming. Is that what you think?
Yeah, it is not just gaming, but it will be inevitable in terms of your everyday life, because I think from a technology standpoint, the value is so clear that, this will get adopted one way or the other, like sooner or later. Yeah.
That's fair. Taking the devil's advocate position here, some people say that blockchain is, as you mentioned before, just a database, right? Like, why do you think Web3 blockchain gaming is going to be inevitable if some would argue that technology has always been there and existing technology is already better? Like, why do you think this isn't just a fact?
So there are two parts of my answer to that questions. The first part is if you're looking at providing the blockchain features, let's say like ownership and trading and let's say GameFi features in general, like renting, lending, and all that. If we're looking at only strictly in that space or that kind of features, it is you can definitely replicate all these features with Web2, but the cost is I would say, like, not would say, but significantly going to be higher for you to maintain that kind of transactional data and to maintain the system that being able to basically serve as a bank. So I came, so my background is also in the BFSI industry, which is financial and insurance services. So basically, as a bank, the first thing in their tech stack is always a core banking system. And what is a core banking system? It's basically your blockchain database, but running in Web2. And maintaining that kind of system is extremely costly, extremely costly, because of the kind of, the kind of volume of transaction that you kind of handle every day. And, you always need oversight in that kind of Web2 technology. You need an admin for database. You need an admin for your AWS instance. You need an admin like everywhere in your infrastructure. But with blockchain, right, the blockchain is self-supervised, hence the decentralization part of it, which bring the maintenance cost much lower in terms of ongoing. And basically, it provides you from, if you can develop smart contract, you can basically build out a core banking system with a very short period of time. And that is where you see with token ICO. Mm-hmm. So token ICO is basically, in terms of technology in banking, is simply you are building a core banking system and deploy it to the public. That's what the ICO actually means, at least for me. And, blockchain makes it so much easier, so much faster, both in terms of implementation and operation going forward. And, that is a huge kind of difference and benefit that I think is undeniable there. The second part of it is in terms of trust. How much can you trust the data that is in your database, right? If you are in a Web2 database, like, let me tell you right now, if you are an admin, you can go in there and you can change anything. And even for core banking system, the same. Mm-hmm. If you only need one guy to go rogue, and, you in deep trouble the next day. So that's why, like, in traditional banking, you have like layers and layers and layers of security and governance to make sure that doesn't happen. And it needs to be coming from both the bank and the country itself, like, the kind of government that's standing behind the bank. And that leads to another problem, of course, in Western countries, or, let's say modern country like US or the Europe Union, the law and compliance around banking is extremely clear and thorough. So of course the trust is good, but in terms of, let's move to a more early stage country, developing country, for Africa, for example, the trust on the government to actually execute the strategy around banking and having the right oversight around banking is, of course, very questionable, right? I don't want to get into politics here, but in terms of trust, how do you feel about trust in this kind of system? And, blockchain, something like Ethereum is definitely very trustworthy, because, you have to go through thousands of nodes before you can actually modify the data there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a very good view. I think not a lot of people realize that, hey, the core banking system, that's how they do it. And the technology is there, but then there's just all these like costs and trust issues that go with it. I think that's a very interesting perspective that not a lot of people realize. But having said that, though, if you apply that model and solution to gaming, Do you think the end user will care? Like the end gamer will care? Like will end gamers, like people playing Bejeweled and Farmville or whatever, do you think they'll care with having a trustless system where they can trust the database or the admins uh, working on their assets as they play a casual game?
Yeah, so the answer is no. They're not going to care about that for sure. So that brings me to my the second phase of our product, that is building out use cases for end users, and that's where we stop. We don't talk about trust and these kind of like technical terms anymore. We kind of moving into how do you as a gamers enjoy this kind of benefit. And that brings me into interoperability, or in short, the ability of using your gaming item across different games. So that is something that has not been done before at all in the Web2 space, because, with a kind of custody ownership around a database, no studio in their right mind would open the game up to other games. But if you put your asset on the blockchain and having it there, and the ownership is verified on the blockchain as well, then the questions become, how do I share this? Like, how do I, as a studio, utilize this ownership in a bigger scope? So let's say you are a publisher, and a publisher or a studio always have multiple games in their ecosystem, right? And let's say one game, you play Farmville, for example. You kind of earning all these like cool icons, cool like skin in the game for after a period of playing, and you found out that, oh, I can actually use this in city view. I can actually use that in, let's say like not city view, but let's say like theme park kind of tycoon or something like that. Kind of in the same simulation space coming from the same publishers. So let's say if you hear that and if you know about that, would you try it out? Like, 100% you would. So from a user perspective, we need to keep developing on these kind of real world applications. And then the conversation just shift through, do you like this feature or not? And, they don't really need to care, like, how do you make this possible anymore? You just know it's there. So yeah, that's my view on how to approach the end users in terms of Web3.
So Giang, coming back into it, what is it you're building in Web3, just to recap for people?
Yeah, so to put it in a one-liner, we are developing SaaS solutions for studios to basically integrate Web3 website into their current like Web2 gaming stack really effortlessly. And how do we do that? Basically, using the same kind of traditional architectures where you call an API to kind of handle a certain action with the system. So yeah, that's from a technical perspective. That's the whole design of that's the whole design of our solutions, and why it is going to be easy to be adopted by by traditional developers or studios.
Got it. So if I try to find a comparable here, is it kind of like Stripe? For like if a website is trying to accept credit cards, they just use Stripe, one API call, that's it. And you're trying to build something for developers or studios trying to offer a blockchain, but just through simple API technology. Is that right?
Yes. So Stripe or POS, like, point of sales kind of system like Square, that is very comparable, actually. But instead of dealing with like, money, we are dealing with digital asset, which is NFTs and your in-game asset. And and how do we do that? Of course, we're not going to have like one API like Stripe, right? Like, I wish it's that simple. We're going to have a lot of APIs, and that's where the SDK came in. We have a specific SDK that is going to guide the user through the integration process, and combined with our kind of like portal, because we are a SaaS-based solution, we have a portal where you can interact with our system. Or very user-friendly UI UX, so that you can basically everything is guided, everything is, you have documents, you have like guidelines to follow, and of course, if you need to talk to someone along the way of the integration process, of course we are here to help guide you and basically even like jumping in and help you with the technical part, like which is the code itself.
Got it. So is the vision kind of like, hey, I'm a developer. It's kind of like I want to build an iOS app or an Android app. I just go into the website. Here's an SDK to build an app from step one to step whatever, and then that's it. Is that the vision? Is it as simple as that?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, what sets your solution apart? I've done my own research as well. I've seen a lot of other companies trying to help introduce Web3 to Web2 people using SDKs and APIs as well. What do you think your specific solution sets itself apart with?
So basically the question is, what is your secret sauce, right?
If you can share your secret sauce, or like,
of course we have our secret sauce, but the secret sauce is very simple. So definitely I can share. It's simply coming from the basis of technology adoption, right? And this is, again, I want to mention my background here again, because I've worked on multiple IT projects where I kind of work step by step with the clients, kind of help them in every kind of step along the way. When they want to use a new technology, they want to integrate with a new system. And I think throughout my career, the best project that I kind of lead and deliver is always based around the process of working with your clients. And I think that is where our secret sauce came in. And that's where it's not really a secret sauce. Everybody knows this, but do they choose to really focus on it is another question, right? We take that kind of philosophy into our product, that, everything that we do, we work closely with our clients, who are the game developers, game studio. We talk with them constantly, kind of bouncing off ideas to basically prompt them to be critical about us, and also hear their feedback every step of the way. So basically, if we're planning to build our features, we always go through a process with the studio to make sure that this is exactly what you need. And vice versa, they can come to us and they be like, okay, I think we need this. I think we need that. And we're going to be like, I think that makes a lot of sense. And that's the kind of philosophy where we going to employ like now, or much later on as well, when we keep developing features after features. And I think that keeping that close interaction and feedback loop with our users, and kind of having that community approach, basically, is going to be the secret sauce of our solutions.
Interesting. Let me double click on that. Like, what are you willing to do in your process that you think others aren't willing to do, that it just makes it easier for them to work with you?
I think the process is I can definitely say I'm not reinventing anything in that whole process, but I do learn from the best. Let's say like AWS, Azure, or Salesforce, which are the solutions I worked closely with before. So I know exactly what kind of experience I get as a customer when working with these kind of brands and technology solutions. And I kind of even from a customer perspective, why do I recommend AWS? Why do I recommend Salesforce to one of my clients, right? Is simply because the kind of guarantee and experience that I'm going to get when I work with them. And this is how we kind of build out the whole process and kind of keep that communication. They always can talk to us if they need to. We always have like different kind of services from very hands-off kind of approach to very hands-on approach, depending on the needs of the clients. And I think that is going to be continue to be our core kind of values as we go forward, like, 1 year, 2 year, 5 years in the future as well. Because without that, eventually, if you lose that connections, you will eventually you will lose out to competitors, basically.
You make it sound so easy, Sam. You make it sound so confident. Let's try to find a chink in that armor then. What do you think are the biggest challenges you will face, or you're already facing right now? Like, what's the biggest pushback?
So the of course challenges is always like everywhere when you're running a startup, right? And not to mention a startup in a very, very new and infant stage kind of technology like Web3. So yeah, the challenges are everywhere. From funding to management to even acquiring talents so that we can build out a product faster. So that is all the challenges that I have to go through every day. And especially with the beer market, is even worse in terms of funding, right? Like, let's say, unless I'm the, AWS in the space right now, is almost very hard to basically have a conversation or initiate a fundraising round in this kind of market. And that applies not even to Web3 startup, and even to Web2 and traditional startup is going through the same thing as well. So yeah, definitely the biggest challenge right now is how to be very disciplined in terms of running the day-to-day operations, making sure we're staying on budget and making sure we are alive to expand on the next phase of the economy.
Makes sense. You mentioned the bear market. Especially with all of the unfortunate news we've had over the past few months in crypto. Based on your conversations with the Web2 studios, who obviously still have a lot of investigations, education about the space, were there any consistent pushbacks, new issues, or things that they've tried to say right now that has really slowed down the business?
I would say the biggest pushback is, of course, coming from the gaming community right now. A lot of big studio has tried to kind of spearheaded this new technology, but they always face with a lot of backlash, and then they kind of scrape the plan. And that happened with Activision, that happened to Ubisoft. And the only, AAA studio right now that I see is still 100% zero in on blockchain is Square Enix. And I think, that's a whole different conversation why I think, they are going in the right direction. But of course, if you look overall, it's very hard right now, even for the studio that wanted to use this technology, simply because the users are always treating it as a taboo. So, forget about everything. The moment you mention NFTs, they're going to turn off. Like, that's it. They're going to log out. So that is the biggest challenge right now in the gaming space for blockchain adoption. And from a business, from a B2B perspective, of course, there's always a pushback in terms of kind of thinking, I don't think it's going to be like this. I don't think it's going to be like that. But that is the usual process as we kind of guide our client through this new technology and kind of brainstorm with them and work our strategy with them. So a lot of it is just part of the kind of like brainstorming and bouncing off ideas. It's not really like a definite no. And if the studio decided to be like, this is a scam, this is like, I'm not going to touch it, then I get no chance to talk to them. So
fair enough. I know we're at the end of our schedule, so let me end with this last question before I give it to you for contact information. As you have these conversations with studios, B2B people, especially once you've launched your product, how do you know that you're on the right track? Like, what's your KPI, metric, North Star, whatever that may be, especially since these consultative types of selling usually takes a long time. It's usually long lead time stuff. So how do you know if the conversation is going the right way or you're progressing into the right direction?
Yes. One metrics that we always keep in touch is basically when we launch, we are going to keep track of basically how many developers sign up for the platforms, as well as getting as much feedback from them as possible, so that even if we are kind of off track somewhere, we can have the data immediately so that we can steer our product development in the right track again. And that is a constant process in developing technology product, not just, blockchain, but also in the past with traditional SaaS Web2 kind of solution as well, is that, the constant communication and feedback is always a must if you want to basically make sure that you are always on track. And also, more importantly, to know exactly when you are starting to get off track as well.
Awesome. Feedback loops. I totally get it. Awesome. With that, that is the end of the call. Thank you, Giang. How do people get in touch? Yes, Giang. How do people get into your space, and how would you advise them to get started?
So yeah, we of course we have a lot of documentation when we're gonna launch that help people going through the product. But I think from a bigger perspective, like if you are developers or if you are looking into being employed in the Web3 development space, especially in gaming, I think how you approach with any problem, you need to know exactly what it is first. So I think there's a really good book that helped me get into blockchain as well, in terms of technology, right? That the book is very, very technical. It is very dry and very boring. That's a disclaimer. But if you stick with it and kind of read through it, you will understand exactly blockchain for what it is and the values as well as its let's say disadvantages, so that you have an idea that okay, this is how the technology is going to be spearheaded into the everyday life of users. And then from there, you can choose exactly where is your value in this kind of new world. Like, am I going to be a developer? Am I going to be a business analyst? Am I going to be an automation kind of engineer or DevOps? Whatever it is, you need to understand the core first. So I'm going to share the book link later, but the book is called Token Economy, how to reinvent Web2. So
awesome. Got it. Thank you. And yes, how do people get in touch? Which channel should they check? Which Twitter handle should they look into?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. So guys, if you want to get in touch, simply connect with my LinkedIn, shoot me a message, and I get back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Giang. That was an amazing first session. Thank you for sharing what you've learned and what you are working on. We're excited for Reneverse to launch.
Thank you, Nigel. Likewise, very enjoyable. Mm-hmm.